In the first week of TinkerCAD, what we want to do this week is that you guys are going to try to create 3 separate designs for me. I'm looking for a wrench, a keychain, and a 6-sided die. And I'm going to go through those right here. So here's an example of what I expect those to look like. As this loads in, I'm going to go to my home view. Okay, reset my work plane. So here are the 3 designs that are due this week. We have a double-sided wrench, a keychain with some text taken out of it, and a dice with holes pulled out on all 6 sides. So for our first example is the keychain. What we're trying to teach here is simply just how to build objects by combining or subtracting shapes. So the way this worked is that I drag out a box, and then I resized it to make it about the size of the handle that I'm looking for. You could type in exact measurements. That would be perfect, especially if you're going to be doing this 3D printing. In our case, we're not 3D printing, so we're just designing. So first I started with that square, and then I dragged some cylinders out, and I added the cylinders to the end of the square. Holding down Shift to keep my proportions correct, I scaled this up, and holding down Option so that it's scaling from the center allows me to keep it in place. Now I can hold down Option and drag this thing across to make a copy. If I hold down Shift while I do that, it will stick it to the X-axis so it stays on level, and then I'm going to drop it right there. Now I can also hold down Shift and select multiple objects, and since these guys are too tall, I'm going to use that to actually scale them both down at the same time. Use the wrong handle there, that was the move. This is scale down. So now I have 2 circles added to the outsides of this box. I also want to make sure that these are lined up correctly, so I'm actually going to click the top view of my view here, and then I'm going to select all 3 of these shapes by dragging from the left a marquee box, and so that I select all of them. Now I can use the Align tool, and it's going to produce some dots for me. What these do is allow me to align objects based on the different axes. So if I rotate this, you can actually see that there is a Y and an X axis, as well as a Z axis that you can see over on this side right here. Okay. From the top, I want to align these to this plane so that they are all lined up in the center. Now that they're all lined up, I can go ahead and group them to create a single object. Give that a second. There you go. Now it has turned into one object. That is called union. When we take 2 objects, combine them into one object is a union. Now we're going to do some subtraction. I have to cut out these holes for the wrench. I'm going to go grab a polygon, drag it over to a side, and then look at this again from the top. Now objects can be solid or they can be holes. So in this case, I'm going to turn this into a hole and try to look down and get this thing lined up as I would expect for a wrench. I may need to rotate it so that we have a flat edge on top and a flat edge on bottom. And I may need to scale it to make sure that I have enough spaces. Just enough grip. Okay? These may be perfect or not perfect. Really the idea here is that we are learning how to use TinkerCAD, manipulate shapes, and so I'm not looking for perfection, I'm just looking for you to practice and play with this. I did the same thing again where I held down the Option and then moved it to create a copy. I'm going to again line this up as best as I can, select all my objects, use my Align tool, and there they are aligned. And I'm going to go ahead and group those, and now I have a wrench. Same idea is going to happen here for the keychain. This time you're going to use the text option. So you're going to have a square. I'm going to go ahead and ungroup this so you can see how it works. Here's a square. And then I dragged out the text option here, and I used the side options for each object. You can see anytime that you have an object or primitive selected, there are options for that. here in the text area, I can change the text. That is how I change the text. I could do it all uppercase if I'd like. I could change the font. I could change its height. You can see the height changing here. As well as if I wanted to bevel it or add extra segments to make it more detailed. I like that one better than my last one, so I'm actually going to drag this one up here and leave it like that. I like the way that looks. I'm going to hold down Shift and combine it with my object. Now I've got a nice tech keychain. I did the same thing over here with the actual rings. I used a torus, brought out the torus, used the manipulators to change the appearance of the torus, and then put those together here for my keychain. Okay, using my rotators to make sure that they were rotated around and it looks nice. Last but not least here was the die. So here I'm going to show you how you can do this die. I'm going to ungroup this one here. This was a demo I was doing earlier. So you can drag out a square if you'd like a box, and you can certainly change its parameters here in order to make it look more dice-like, and you can certainly use that as a die for this example, or you can simply drag out the dice example provided in the simple shapes. Here's that simple shapes. So what we need to do here is we need to actually subtract holes from each edge. Now it's a little bit hard because right now every time we drag something it sticks itself to the work plane. It'd be better if we can somehow make it so that when we drag it out it actually sticks to the die itself. And that's what the work plane tool will do for us. So if we click on the work plane tool, which is up here, or the W key on your keyboard, it'll make our cursor into a square, and you can see as I drag over different objects, it actually rotates that square according to the plane that I am dragging over. In this case, I want to actually create a work plane on the top of this cube. So if I select the top face of this cube, it has now moved that work plane to the top of the cube. And that's going to allow me to drag an object directly on top of that, providing it in the exact spot I need it to be. I'm going to hold down Shift and Option so I can drag this to make it smaller. And here now I have added a dot to the top of the cube. Again, I'm going to make this a hole because I wanted to subtract some holes. I'm also going to rotate it along one plane. Oops. Let me get a little bit of better view here. Okay, I also want to take this object and rotate it along one plane 180 degrees so that it becomes a subtraction. Move it down, take my top view, ensure that it's aligned properly, and then group the objects so that I have subtracted that shape out. I can reset my work plane. Now I have completed one side of the die. You're going to repeat this for every side. So you have 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And your final result should look like this. Once you have all those there, you're ready to go to the next stage. Thanks, guys.